Hello everybody and welcome back. This is the reviewing the legacy gameplay Rock versus this is the round 1 game 1, so Rock versus Miracle Whip. We're going to be going through looking at some errors that I noticed, talking about some of the things that I saw. Again, this is all from my viewpoint, so if you see something else, feel free to comment on it. If you have commented during on the videos for the gameplay, I'll try and incorporate that, so feel free to comment there. And if you've liked what you've seen so far, feel free to like and subscribe to the videos. I upload bi-weekly, so, or at least I attempt to. It's been about 3 weeks, so there's probably going to be 2 different uploads this week. A new gameplay with the updated version of this deck, and there's this review. So, without further ado, here we go. This opening hand is absolutely terrible. There's no reason for us to even think about keeping it. We only have a tapped land. And this land, while it's slow, we do have 2 fetch lands and the bog. We want to actually save the bog, and the reason being is because if we play the bog on one and it turns out that we're playing dredge, we've just committed suicide. So what we want to do is, if we keep this hand, which we end up doing, which is it's a fine choice. The problem that would be with it is that you don't have a play. You don't have a play until turn 3. But with how little fast combo is actually in the format, and with Knight being able to cause issues for things like Sneak Show and the different other decks in the format, we are okay to kind of exist. One of the things that we do have access to is just to kind of scare our opponent, so playing a fetch land, not cracking it, which will buy us time. You know, if they decide to go end of turn in Tomb, hopefully we can get them to waste their black source on, or their mana for the turn on Thought Seizing us, in which case they take the Knight and we Bojuka Bog their graveyard. So that's why we're keeping this hand. Slower, but you have the ability. We are hoping to draw another untapped land. That way we can kind of keep the bog up. By not playing the bog first, we end up on the slower side. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. Alright, here we are at our first stop. We're at 38 seconds into the match, and what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up fetching. The reason why we fetch here on turn 1 and we're grabbing a basic forest, thank you, is because we're playing around Stifle. Of everything that we have in the deck, forest is our most powerful land. I know that seems awkward, seeing that Caracas puts back up Emrakul, Horizon Canopy draws cards, Wasteland stunts their development. Forest gives us access to Green Sun Zenith, which gives us access to birds, which means that Forest gives us access to other cards in our deck, whereas Swamp gives us access to Thoughtseize and Bob, and Plains would give us access to Swords and Stoneforge Mystic. There's not as much pull from those colors as there are from Forest. Here we are again. This is the 3 minutes 40-second mark. The reason why I stopped here is because we have a couple of different lines of play. We've already drawn our card for the turn, the Sylvan Library there at the end, and our opponent has a Jace and just bounced our Knight. So that's the context of where we are. You can see it in the chat on the left-hand side. We have a decision here. We can play Knight of the Reliquary, we can play Sylvan Library leaving up Swords, we can play Pulse targeting Jace. Those are all of our choices. We don't have other targets to be able to Swords. We could play the diamond and let it die, but that doesn't seem like a very good option. We don't have a Goyf in hand and aren't playing one this turn, or swinging for lethal if we get artifact in the yard, so that choice is out. Library will help keep up with Jace, but at this point we're behind because there's the Jace on the table, and he's going to get an activation out of it to brainstorm before we get an activation out of it to pretty much ponder our upkeep decision. That being said, that only leaves Pulse for Jace and Knight. And seeing as our opponent already bounced the Knight, if they bounce it next turn, he'll have 4 open mana up, possibly 5, which is enough to hard cast Force of Will or some other problematic card. So playing the Knight becomes a bad choice. Pulsing the Jace is something that we can rely on. It's something that if it hits, we're in better position, and if he counters it, we have another one. So pulsing the Jace is the option that we end up going with here. We don't play the Knight because we basically time walk ourselves with the draw of a Sylvan Library if we play the Knight. So that's why we do that, and I will be back in a little bit to kind of keep going. And we're back. We're at the 5-minute 40 mark. Well, just shy of. It's 5:38. We have a choice here. We have a choice of what to hit, Jace or Counterbalance. Reason we have this is we've already seen Oblivion Ring get flipped, I believe. Yeah. I don't remember if we did. I'm kind of skipping through this. I watched the videos at 4 a.m. and am now recording this at 1 p.m. So you do the math on how much attention was given for this section. We're already behind, and we have a choice, though, between Counterbalance and Jace. We have our third Pulse. The other two are in the graveyard. We have the Knight still in hand. His Jace is still at 2. That's still a bad option. We have to deal with one of those two. Dealing with the Counterbalance gives us the ability to fight Jace as a creature. Also gives him the ability to just dig for another Counterbalance. Killing the Jace, on the other hand, leaves him with a Counterbalance in a deck that is showing higher casting costs. So I'm not guaranteed to get anything. Granted, I can still Zenith for Pride Mage, and when I get up to 3 mana and 4 mana, which I'd want to actually do at 5, and Zenith with wow, tongue-tied. Zenith at 4, or at 3, so a total converted mana cost of 4, leaving up the activation of Pride Mage, which would be able to blow up the Counterbalance end of turn. We don't want to have to be in this position, but it's the position we're in. The things to take note are actually for Game 2. This game is close to being wrapped up just because of the position we've allowed ourselves to get into, and that's that our opponent only has 2 plains and 4 islands. So that's the main information that you want to take out of this situation. We are lacking in lands. As you see, our opponent has 6 and we have 4. This library may have helped against that, but we don't know for sure. I'm going to keep this going so that I can remember which one I hit. Okay, so we do go for the Jace. We're basically going for the card draw engine and creature control. Our opponent already has a top, but Jace allows him to brainstorm, find a shuffle effect, and then top after he shuffles. So his draws are improving drastically, and he's getting a second one each turn. That's not something that very many decks can fight, and it's a really good idea if you just want to beat discard, except for Jace costs 4 and you have to get up that high. So a little bit of a bad thing for us. The discard isn't as good because of all of the manipulation from the top, but we still have to kind of keep it. We still don't know what our opponent is entirely playing against, and that's a problem that I have to figure out. Here we are. This is the next turn. We just drew the Stoneforge Mystic. We have a choice here. The goal right now is to get to that other land that we're looking for. We need to be able to get up to the amount of mana to be able to at least play the Pride Mage and shoot this before he casts a second Swords. So in order to do that, we have 3 different options here. First option, Knight of the Reliquary. If we land a Knight of the Reliquary, then we can fetch the next turn, or we can Zenith with the mana, or with Zenith on the stacker with all the mana up. We can fetch out another fetch land, and then go for one of the other lands so that we can have the mana up to activate to get rid of the Counterbalance, instead of waiting and doing it after it's in play, and then when we activate, we run the risk of just having him counter it. So that's the argument for Knight. The argument for Stoneforge is that it thins the deck. If our opponent has the swords in hand already, or on the top 3 cards of their deck, or technically the top 4, because they can just look again on their turn. If they have a shuffle effect, that gives them a bunch more. So, you know, the knight has to survive. Stoneforge Mystic will be able to pull out, in this case, the Batterskull. 5, he's already got 2 forces in the yard, is pretty hard to reach at that point. And our opponent still has 41 cards that they're looking at, essentially. So it gives us the ability to have something that will be difficult to counter, if not impossible. Also gives us a recurring creature, so if he swords the creature, we can bounce it back to our hand, hopefully be able to replay it if we get the mana up. What that means is that we're only improving the probability of us drawing a land. So in that case, it's risk versus reward. You want to change your probability and do it the safe way and have a very high risk of not drawing a land, or do you want to risk him in the top 4 cards of his library having one of his 3 remaining swords? That being said, your third option here is to Sylvan Library and try and draw the land the next turn. The problem with that is the problem that I didn't mention also with the Stoneforge Mystic, and that's that our opponent has Counterbalance top up. So of those 3, the one most likely to resolve is the Knight, and if I can ever figure out how to tap my mana, we can go that route. And for us in this situation, the Counterbalance didn't hit, so we know that at least next turn we can Green Sun for 3. But unfortunately, Snapcaster dealt with the Knight. It was a card that I wasn't exactly thinking about. There happens to be another Snapcaster somewhere around floating in his deck, but if you look at his mana that's available, he gets to Snapcaster Force me, which sucks. Alright, here we are at the next step. I just want to show you this, and I'll stop it afterwards and explain why it was a misplay. So go ahead and pay attention. We have a Green Sun Zenith for 2 going. We have his Counterbalance trigger, and he just popped his top. So this was where I had remarked earlier the Counterbalance Force. But did you notice what already has been wrong with this? Just wondering. Because it already happened. The actual misplay happened, and it causes us to take extra damage. What we screwed up on, our opponent just literally put a 1 on top of his deck. What does swords cost? That means that that Counterbalance, once he popped his top, made it impossible for me to sword either of these 2. While his top activation trigger was on the stack, I was supposed to actually swords this, because it was the only one that I could, that Snapcaster Mage. That means that I have 12 turns as opposed to 6. Now, in this case, that is not a lot of time, because we're already hanging underneath this thing. And the chances that he has a 2 on top, still pretty good. But we are keeping cards out of his hand. So if we do find something that he doesn't have on top, we can kind of push that point a little bit. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. And this is the part where we conceded. Not necessarily a misplay, but we could have drug it out a little bit longer. By the time that he would kill us, let's see, we draw a card, hits us to 60. We may have to discard, in which case we can pitch a diamond. I believe, yeah, I think we do discard 1 to 2 cards, in which case we just don't have to play a land either. We can just discard those. We are in a position that we can't win anymore. He's got his Jace up active. We are dead in hand. And he's got 2 Snapcasters attacking in. His goal at this point is to just Fate Seal us and see as much of our deck as possible, keep us as limited as possible. Possibly, well, his initial thing is to get back his top that he just popped to get the Jace. But as long as you can keep me from having the ability to be threatening, you don't care. So once the top is in play, all you have to do is Fate Seal me out. Conceding here, fine. But I should have went to see a little bit more, because the 2 Snapcasters and the Vendalion click as threats put me to thinking that my opponent was Stoneblade with Counterbalance in it. Unfortunately, that was entirely wrong and based off of just what I had seen and just kind of an assumption that people online would not be able to adapt very quickly. Turns out our opponent was playing Miracle Whip, and we suffer heavily for it. Luckily, some improper boarding kind of saves us, but that's game 2, and we'll get to that in a moment. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll be right back.